Welcome, everybody. I'm Ptsd, for those of you who might not know me. And what a joy it is today to see all these people interested in something so fascinating. Lori and I were splitting this up. I told her I wanted to mic first. I wanted to talk more. But first of all, we thought it would be fun for all of you to know how this all came to be, because I don't think an awful lot of you do know. About a year ago, I was in a foursome with the author's mother, and I had seen her golfing with others, and it was really fun that day because there were two foursomes of us that sat at a table for 8 out here, and being the true interrogator that I am, I said, "Oh my gosh," I said, "you're new, and we need to know all about you." So we then proceeded to talk about our families, and so we got to her first actually. To us, but so she said, well, she had these 3 children, and that they were from Chicago, a little bit better, and then we went on the table telling her about artists, and I said, I have a granddaughter, and she's graduating from college. We don't talk about grandchildren. Well, I had a full list. So I said she's graduating from college this year with a creative writing major. So Ronki said, oh my gosh, she said, Pat, my daughter graduated from Harvard with a creative writing major. So that led to, oh, is there something they can do with that? And because my granddaughter loves to write, and I assumed that it would be something. But so anyway, Ronki then proceeded to very humbly tell us that yes, her daughter was an author. She lived in San Diego, and she was writing a third trilogy books. And it was very exciting. And we said, what's it all about? And she said, oh, you probably wouldn't be interested. So we said, well, we probably would be. And so it was decided among the table that let's start a book club. And we're going to have your daughters be the first book that we do. So we also said, if we do this, do you think your daughter would come to our first book club meeting if we're going to discuss her book? And so she said, yeah, she probably would. That would be really nice. So Lori, Felipe, and I just jumped with that. All 8 of us bought our books, all 548 pages. And it wasn't too fine a print, but if you go to the very rare end of it, it's really small. But I don't think any of us have read the book totally yet. But we have it. Oh, somebody did back there. But at any rate, I'm not going to go on long about this, but it was really funny because Lori and I talked, and I said, do you want to call the daughter, or should I? Finally, it was decided that Lori would, only for us to find out that she didn't talk to her, she talked with the agent. And then back and forth, emails to the agent, and it was like, this is really a big deal. And it was really exciting. And so between the emails and John Cummings and myself participating, and can we do this at Andalusia? Can we make it bigger? It came to fruition. Thank you, John Cummings, because you let us do this. You got a great idea. It's something we haven't done at Andalusia, and I know, because I've been here a long time. But it's fun because amongst all of us, we probably don't know some of what our careers have been and how interesting they've been, or our families, or somebody else. And we hope this might generate more coming forward, because it's just a joy. And so anyway, thank you, Andalusia, for the wine. They hosted this for us today, and it's beautiful. I don't know, the food lately at events, they say is like 5-star. So that's a good deal. And this being a wonderful event. So I'm going to turn this over to Lori, and let's all enjoy it. It's really fun. Thank you for being here.
I just wanted to introduce Rocky, if you don't know who Rocky is. Many of us have played golf with her, but some of you don't. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about Rocky and Yomi, the parents of our guest of honor today. As Pat said, they are from Chicago. Yomi is a doctor, and Rocky has had her own hospice business, and thankfully they came out to the desert, and they've been here for about 2 or so years. and they have 3 kids. Tomi is the middle of the 3. They have an older son and a younger daughter, and we are very, very blessed to have them in our community. And if you got to know any of them, enjoyed them on the golf course. I see them on the golf course sometimes twice a day, so they are avid golfers. And Rocky's golf game, I have seen for myself, is really coming along. So she's a force to be reckoned with on the golf course. So hopefully you get to know her a little bit better today. But Rocky wanted to introduce our moderator today, and then I will introduce our guest of honor. So Rocky, you want to introduce Brandon?
Thank you all for coming.
This is
First of all, I want to say thank you to John, Jason, Lori, and Pat. You guys made this happen. When I said yes to make you come, I was not sure. But my birthday was July 31st last year, so I said, Tomi, I know what I want for my birthday. You're going to come to Andalusia. I know how to bribe her. So I just want to say thank you. Lori and Pat has put so much in. John, we're very grateful. And Tomi normally doesn't like anybody to moderate an event, but so when Pat and Lori asked me, I said, no, she doesn't like moderate. She just likes to come in and talk to audience and take questions. Needless to say, she asked me to moderate. I was like, okay. And then we found out Brandon is going to be here. If there's a fan of Tomi, the #1 fan in the world, it is Brandon. I just played golf with him today, and Tomi also has about 72 people in town today for a golf tournament for 4 days, so we started another this year today. So it's a full Adeyemil blast today. So for those of you who are wondering about this year, if you see me tomorrow, you might be shocked. That's how I keep Yomi guessing who is going to go to bed with. There are 5 of these, and you never know who you're going to see. So, it's short, it's long, it's still me on the so that's why I'm still happy for 35 years. So, I want to introduce Brandon. We met Brandon at a very difficult time in Tomi's career, and Brandon is a partner at the firm that actually manages Tomi's financial affairs, and I cannot be excited to introduce Brandon. But #1 Zeli farm. In his office, he has 2 goldfish, and they are both Amari and Zeli. Brandon, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll give you back to Lori to introduce.
Beautiful, yes. Brandon Burnett, and I have a business management firm in Beverly Hills called Lifeline, and we have the honor to represent entertainers and athletes. I started it with one of my best friends and brothers, Lamek Lukanga, and we've grown today and into a premier business management firm, and we've been blessed to link up with Tomi. And about a year ago, I've been her business manager. Our firm has represented her, and the future is still very bright. I became the biggest fan because got to know her through her legal team and our business management team. And oh yes, through Jesse and Ryan North. Thank you so very much. So much pleasure. Picked up her book as the first step, and immediately realized her brilliance. And it's the greatest honor to be here. I was golfing today, and Ronky was like, "You want to moderate the event?" And I was, wow, I should have probably stopped playing golf, but I have very scattered notes, so bear with me. And so much thanks to the Nords, and I'm just honored to be here. I'm going to sit up here as a big fan with you all, and the honor is all mine. So,
Yes. There's
thank
one
you.
person I have to give shout out to. Jesse, can you please stand? And her husband, their partners at their law firm, they turned Tomi's. Tomi just signed a deal with Paramount to write a screenplay, executive produce, and has creative control.
Wow.
And all this happened because of Jesse, Ryan, and the team around Tomi. Jesse, we didn't see you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll sit right there. So I have the honor of introducing Tomi. So I'm going to say a few words, and then as she comes up, we have a video to introduce her. As some of you've seen, the emails that have been sent out by Lucia had some really fun interviews and made us all laugh. Tomi is a Nigerian American. She's a screenwriter, but most importantly, she's a storyteller. She is now based in LA instead of San Diego, so yay LA. She did graduate from Harvard with a degree, an honors degree in English Lit. One thing that I found really interesting is she studied West African mythology, religion, and culture in Brazil, which I'm sure gives that authenticity to writing. She was named the Time Magazine 100 Most Influential People in 2020. And her first novel, Children of Blood and Bone, debuted #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And then her second of the trilogy, Children of Virtue and Vengeance, also debuted as #1. So that's an incredible feat right there. Multiple studios as her employer, as a business team, can tell you we're in negotiations for the movie rights. And as Ronki said, that's incredible for someone to, that's an author to have that creative control and to be able to write the screenplay. That's just, she obviously has a lot of power to wield, and she's done a beautiful job of it with her team. According to Paramount Pictures, who bought the rights to bring this to life on the big screen, it is not only a phenomenon in the young adult world, it has transformed every expectation of what world-building fantasy can be. With its thought-provoking and timely themes, we know that the story will resonate with a global audience. And I think you will discover that when you hear us look at it today. And thank you, Brandon, for being here. And with that, would you please welcome Tomi Adeyemil, and please roll the video.
But how and when did you get interested in writing? What were some of those early subjects that you wrote about? And who inspired you to begin this writing journey?
Yeah, okay. Love it. Hi, guys. Hi. Something I told Ronki, I was like, I just want everyone to be drunk. So if I say something smart, then it's anything. Yeah, something that moves you, drink. Something makes you cry, drink. I just think by the end of this, we should all feel very jolly, very literate, but mostly drunk. That was my dream for this. So I will call you out on it. In terms of writing, writing was the first thing that I ever did that no one told me to do. And I think that's important to say because especially when we're around kids, when you're trying to figure out like, oh, what do you want to do and all these things, which almost feel like outdated, cliche, like 90s posters questions, but they're not, because we all want to do different things. One of the most amazing parts of having the team that I have right now that Ronki was instrumental in helping me build, it's funny, she gave birth to me, so she's my mom. But then she became my manager, and I love it, because I get to be like, what are you doing? You're always on the clock. This is going in your review. And so it's really fun. It's a really great time to flip that. But Ronki really put together this amazing team, and what's so beautiful about it is everyone has such a passion for what they do. You and Humble have such a passion for financial management. And have I ever smiled saying financial management? No. That's how passionate they are. Jesse and Ryan have such a passion for legal destruction. I'm like, it's not law with you. You destroy your enemies, and I love it. For me, it was storytelling and where the story came from. I really wanted a horse. I was reading these books about these girls on a horse farm. I really wanted a horse. I really wanted a twin. I had been rewatching The Parent Trap with Lindsay Lohan, and I was like, that's all I'm missing is a British twin. Like, I could tell. And then I really wanted a sari because I was watching this Bollywood movie every day called Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham. And I wanted all these things. And I asked my mom, and she said no. So me in my little, like, vindictive, I don't know, 5, 6, 7-year-old mind was like, well, I'll give myself everything I want in a story. So the first story was called The Black Champion. It was like 35 pages. The twins' names were Marilyn and Carolyn. They were 10-year-old geniuses that met at Hubbard University, because I could not pronounce V's. They reunited their parents on a horse farm over the summer. But one horse, there was a wild horse on the farm, and that was the one that like Marilyn had to tame. And yeah, that's where it started. So it's like, again, I didn't even know that I wrote until I was like 18 because I'd just been doing it. And I didn't talk to anyone about it, I didn't show anyone about anything. So it really was inside. And then I had a period last year where I lost my gift for writing and storytelling, and I had to get it back like Rocky style, but like not fun. It's not fun. The montage isn't fun when it's not a montage and when you're just doing the work every day. But it really solidified for me, like, oh, this gift came from God. This isn't me. And so it made me easier, or it's made it easier, because I think before, when I started this journey, I was like, oh, it's all on me, I gotta figure it out. And now I'm like, oh, okay, this is a gift that was given to me, I just gotta like experience it and share it. And yeah, so writing has always been there, and stories have always been there. And I love it, yeah.
Thank you for sharing it. Well, let's just, before we get into too many more characters and this, we'll kind of be high level, and let's just describe what, from your perspective, is the overall theme of this trilogy.
Ooh. It's different now that I'm writing the movie, because it's like the theme for the books is different. Mostly because these stories are all very personal, and so even like where I thought the trilogy was going to end when I got the book deal has changed, because I've changed and the world changed and how I've looked at everything has changed. So it's difficult to say it's easy to say the theme of the movie because I had to figure it out, but I don't want to ruin it for you. I want you to discover it. So for the theme of the books, I think the theme is about not giving up on the belief in your power and your place in the world. And I say that because when I wrote the book, I was very, I don't know if the word is constricted or cocooned, but I was in a lot of pain about the state of the world. And that's when police brutality was like on the news every other week, and there was always another face and another headline and another story. And I was like 20 at this time. And so for me, growing up, I knew I'd experienced racism, but it was all like I'm like, how do you measure? It was like the racism light. Yeah, we'll say that. Where it was, sure, they were hurtful experiences, but they all boiled into something where I was like, you're stupid. It was like the racism light. Yeah, we'll say that. Where it was, sure, they were hurtful experiences, but they all boiled into something where I was like, you're stupid. And even if I can't say that out loud. Did I ruin it again? No? Can you hear? Brandon.
Is the green light on, Brandon?
It is now.
Go, Brandon. I don't really know how I keep breaking it, but that's okay. They were experiences of like, basically you're stupid, so you don't matter. And one day I'm going to show you. I've always been very vengeful. That's why this book has vengeance in it. They were never they were always limited to encounters, one-off encounters with ignorant people. And I have been very blessed in my life that I've had amazing encounters with people, which is crazy. I'm always like, statistically, that doesn't make sense, but that's what God's for. So I've had a lot of amazing experiences. I only had a couple of racist experiences growing up, and it should have been much worse, but it was a really wonderful upbringing. So thanks, Mom. And with going to college, though, that's the first time you're like stepping out in the world, and that's when Trayvon Martin was killed. And that's when, in the Hunger Games, there was a lot of internet backlash against the black characters in the movie, because everyone's like, why'd they make them black? Why'd they make them black? And that was very traumatizing to me, to see such anger for representation in a fictional world. I was like, damn. Like, your hatred has to be deep to carry it. That's like going into Narnia and being like, wait, I'm mad at you here, and I'm gonna be mad at you here. And I'm like, there are kids running around stabbing each other, and like, you're that angry that I'm here? So that broke my heart, but it also made me enraged. And it's basically just, when I got into the world, and I was like, oh, racism is still lethal. I thought we had left racism being lethal in like the 50s. But it's like, no, this is still killing. Oh wow, there's still a lot of deep hatred, because look at it displaying itself in a completely fictional world. It was a really, I guess it was like a heartbreaking time. That's maybe my first child to adult transition, but I still felt like a child. But you just start looking at the world and you're like, oh, there's a lot more going on here, and a lot of it is bad than I originally thought. So when I wrote Children of Blood and Bone, there was this desire to feel like you had the power to fix things. And at that point, the problem was police brutality, and it's like, well, how do you fix that? And I'm like, okay, well, if you could understand it, if you can humanize it a little bit more, if someone can at least feel the emotions of what it feels like. Because I remember the one thing I had really wanted to, I don't want to say explore. That sounds so like I really wanted to explore the theme. So I'm like, no, I was still like 22. But one thing I was dealing with was the emotional PTSD of living in the country with those things being so publicized. Because even when it's not your name, you see your face, you see your mother's face, you see your father's face, you see your brother's face, you see your cousin's face. There were moments where I would get in the car and I would start having like a panic attack or an anxiety attack, because I was like, I just want to go to CVS and get jelly beans, but what if a cop stops me and I'm dead? And then if he kills me, then there's not even going to be justice, because there's never justice. So it was just like it was living with a lot of fear, it was living with a lot of anxiety. And then I remember at that time a sense of hopelessness, because it's like, well, why am I working so hard for anything if my life can just end like that? So with Zaylee in the book, I really feel that, you know, she's in this world and it's a brutal world, and she's lost everything. She's lost her mother, she's lost her magic. And there's just this, I think girls are like dragons, and like once you get a little girl angry enough, she will burn down the entire kingdom. So that's basically the theme. You make her angry enough, you make her sad enough, that's coming back at you, because there is just this sense of, no, it doesn't have to be like this, or it shouldn't be like this. And yeah, I think that's it. And you sort of see that theme in Amari as well. The princess, as she goes from someone who has no voice to being like, actually, I can do this, and like, this is my kingdom too, and this is what I want for it. So yeah, there's an answer somewhere there.
It was poetic. And I guess I have this book, I'm so thankful I took it on the airplane with me. It's highlighted and written up, but to, you know, piggyback exactly what you said in your author's note relating to police brutality and injustice. You said, this is just one of the many problems plaguing our world, and there are so many days when these problems still feel bigger than us. But let this book be proof that we can always do something to fight back. As Zelly says in the ritual, we are all children of blood and bone. And just like Zelly and Amari, we have the power to change the evils in the world. We've been knocked down for far too long. Now let's rise. And those two characters, that's why my fish are named after them. Zelly and Amari and their quest to restore the kingdom of Orisha. So thank you for this very powerful book and of that theme. And so to piggyback or just kind of keep that flowing, let's talk about some of the characters. The Children of Blood and Bone is written from 3 characters, 3 different perspectives, and make sure you pay attention to the first, the title of every chapter, because that's how the I is going to be in that chapter. So with the 3 different perspectives, which one was the most challenging to write? Let's begin there.
Okay. Very good question. Zaylee is basically just like the British version of me. So she's very easy to write. Like, she says what I say, but she just says it more poetically. So she's so easy. I would say Amari was the most difficult because she didn't exist in the beginning. The way stories come to me are, it's like algebra. And so it's like, I was in a gift shop in Brazil and I discovered the Orisha, which are like, it's West African spirituality. The easiest way to explain them is kind of like West African gods and goddesses, but it's the more nuanced way is there's still the belief in a supreme deity, and so they're almost like angels, and that you can commune with. So if it's like us, then it's the Orisha, and then it's like the great creator. And so I discovered, I was in this gift shop in Brazil, I was just trying to avoid the rain, and I saw the picture of the Orisha, and I'd never seen West African, I just never even imagined like West African gods and goddesses, and I've been writing since I was a kid, so I think that also shows how our brains really are like, you need to see it to believe it, because as soon as I saw the pictures, I had the whole world. And then like 8 months later, I saw this picture of a girl. It was just a really cool black girl in space. It was an illustration, and I was like, what's her story? And I was like, well, what if she's a fisherman? Or what if she has to go trade a fish? And what if like a princess runs up to her? And so I had the story. I knew she had the enemy in Anan. But there were things that happened in the story that Zaylee wouldn't be present for, and that Anan wouldn't be present for. So Amari was born more out of necessity, of like, oh, she has to see some things. So she's really there for chapter 3. But then it's like, well, she has to be her own character now. So she was the most difficult, but she ended up being, I think she has the best journey in the book, because by the time I get to the end and she says like her line, I'm like flip over the table. I feel so empowered. I'm just like, wow. So it's funny that that's the one I struggled with the most, that literally had like, no, that was there by like, okay, she's X. She has to be X. Because I was always like, what are you doing? You're so annoying. But I was like, no, you're strong, you're growing, you also are part of me. So yeah, most challenging.
Especially in the second book, it really feels she finds
Yeah.
her way. Mama Agba
Yeah.
is the mentor that we all wish we had. Are there qualities of Mama Agba that are based on real life mentors?
I think something that's very special and magical about Black women is the love that they make you feel. and it's almost like different ice cream flavors. Like when you go to, I was in Atlanta for a layover and I was like eating in the airport and I forgot what the waitress said. She just like, oh, you want something, honey? And I was like, you know, like you just start crying because you're just like, oh my God, I just felt so much love. And I feel that with like, there's different flavors of it. So that's the Atlanta flavor. I think the West African flavor is like, I have an aunt, and when I hug her, I'm like, oh, this is like the peace of God. Like, it's just heaven inside her arms. So I think more than any specific, like, oh, this is from this and this is from this, I think just capturing that sense of love and nurturing. And it's fun because you're not safe. You're like, are you gonna spank me? You know, that's also you live on the edge of fear because it's funny though, and even writing the movie and like those scenes with Mama Agba in the beginning, I think just capturing that sense of love and safety that you really feel is what I tried to capture with her.
Love it. Sorry if I'm jumping around. Hopefully there's a cohesive flow to everything. But when you read these books, especially when you try to think of how Paramount and Lucasfilms is going to capture this magic, the Magi, and there's these scenes in the book that when you read it, you try to do it and you create your own magic. But you mentioned in this book there's a quote that says, "Awakening magic is like adding a new sense. Your body needs to adjust to the strain." And it's just kind of, how do you develop? What was your writing style? How does one create a fictional, magical place that really takes you into this magical place?
You do it really badly for 20 years, and then you hit the 10,000 hour mark. And it's still difficult, but it starts making sense. Because something I was talking about is there are a lot of writers who, when they break in with something, or when they get published, and maybe they wrote like a contemporary fiction book or like something else, and they're like, I can't wait to write my fantasy. And I always just like smile, because I'm like, do you understand, not even this, do you understand 20 years of horrible, horrible fantasies needed to be created for me to even get the premise for this one, which then required 40 extensive drafts to be out. I'm like, do you think a lot of people, it's all trial and error, all of it, any skill. It's like golf. It's like, oh, my dad would be so happy. I have -5 minutes in golf training, probably less. I'm like, no, there's none of that. I couldn't do both. But it's years, and it's years and years and years and years and years of writing fantasies, of writing 300 pages of Naruto, like my favorite anime growing up, fan fiction, which involves so many ninja battles. And I'm just doing that instead of doing my homework. Like I'm doing that for fun. So now I can look back and it does feel like a Rocky montage. It's not the speed back, it's the little girl like frantically writing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages and also working her imagination and then also learning and studying story structure at XYZ. So it's always very like, to me when someone's like, I'm gonna write a thing, because I was like, this is literally, I'm probably considered an expert or a master in this, and it's still the most difficult thing ever. Like writing the screenplay, I'm like, this is great. Finishing this trilogy, all my white hairs. So, lots of practice. But it's also because I think that goes back to that inner spark. It's the first thing I just started doing. So I think we should pay attention to that in our children and our grandchildren, and even the teenagers, like what is that one thing that you didn't even have a noun for because you just did it? But we should also think about that in ourselves. Because I mean, I'm an adult junior, adult light. I'm adult light, and so as I'm aging and I'm like, oh my God, things like change. You know, you're like, wow, what is this? We don't really explain aging to kids, so as you're doing it in your 20s, you talk to your friends, you're like, this is insane. But this, even as I've gone through other periods of my life, I've still had to return to like, hey, when you were left completely alone, this is what you chose to do. So that means this is what you want to do. Or this is what you can feel safe returning to. Even when the entire world changes and your world changes and the way you're telling these stories change. It's like for me, the journey over the past 2 years has been returning to the girl who would just sit in her room and write. Because that's my happy place. And it had to transform when I was pushing for this to be my career and to be my source of income and to like build to the point where I can now return to that little girl who just, because everyone's like, oh, you're so like happy now. And I was just like, I'm done with my 28-year villain plan. I can chill. I can just write for a couple years and then I'll always write. I don't know if I'll share everything because I'm lazy. But yeah, just always writing. Yeah.
Well, I do want to honor that sacrifice. Some of my other clients with actresses, directors, writers in the film industry is very collaborative. And when they've, some of the feedback I've gotten when they've ventured into writing was the isolated process that it truly does take to write a book. It's you, your thoughts, your rewrites, the struggle to imagine, the muses talking to you and not talking to you. So I just wanted to honor that and the brilliance that it takes to write these books in this trilogy. It comes from a very magical, divine space. And it's, so when we hold these books, let us always just, honor your brilliance and your sacrifice.
My financial management.
It's an honor to be here. You got an amazing team. You got an amazing team.
The rhetoric.
You got an amazing team. You got an amazing team behind you. And we are grateful to be on your team and to support your brilliance. We got you. So, oh gosh, now where am I? I got to do that. Let's,
Do we want to do like one more and then audience questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
please, audience, bail me out. And I need more sips. We're this is where it's joy. Well, shoot, where do I go? What do I end with?
What's
Do
the
we have?
question in your heart?
Do we
Follow your
have
heart.
some of it was just just the relevancy of this fictional book versus the real life interpretations of it. I think with Russia invading Ukraine and kind of the relevancy of that and how it kind of affects and this is the good and evil. And there's often times in the book where they're celebrating their most joyous moments in festivals and rituals, and then there's an attack. And it's kind of a reminder that you have this beauty and all of that, but you also have to violently defend that. And so how kind of are some of the themes that really play within this story and this journey and the fight for injustices, whether they be police brutality or a invasion of your sacred homeland. I don't know if that was a question, but you see that and you've taken this story and turned it into a beautiful journey of Zélie and Amari fighting for that and fighting for their kingdom. Maybe just talk about the real world versus some of these fictional things that are going on in the present day and at this current moment.
I think one of the biggest things that's changed for me from the girl who started writing this trilogy to the woman that's ending it is that larger understanding of the world. the 22, 23-year-old Tomi was like, well, why are things like this, and why is this and this, and why can't they just stop doing this? And you know what? Well, I'm just gonna do this. Like that was my understanding. And then as I got older and started really, you just understand the world and you understand humans, and you really just start to understand infrastructure. But there's also empathy. Like 23-year-old Tomi didn't have any empathy for cops and police officers because she felt like she was just being attacked. 28-year-old Tomi has so much love and empathy because she doesn't just think of the 23 or 24 or 25 like highly publicized incidents of wrongdoing. She thinks of the video, like yesterday, it came up on TikTok, it was these 4 cops, all fathers, breaking into a hotel room where this child had been kidnapped and was with the kidnapper. And it's like, though, that's what I think about when I think about a police. I used to just think of fear. Like I said, I'd be shaking in my car. But I'm like, oh no, humans, understand the humans. But don't look at the name, don't look at the noun, don't look at the organization. Understand that there are literally humans everywhere. And we're talking about a group of humans who have to wake up every single day and go into only bad situations. You know, you think about your job. When I have to show up to my job, it's like now I have this nice little den, I have these Post-it notes, I light my incense, I light my candles, I put on my rain, I got my, I'm like, that's me going to work. If I imagine going to work as the exact opposite, I don't know what situation I'm gonna be in, I just know it's gonna be bad, because when I'm called, it's bad. No one ever calls me because it's good. That's me day in, day out. And I'm doing this to try and, it's like you go to the heart and you go underneath it and you're like, okay, so what are the real problems? And then you can start thinking of like, okay, training and etc. and this, but not going from like, you are doing this to me. It's like, hey, I have done my work to put myself in your shoes day in and day out. So I'm not coming at you with what this guy did in Minnesota. I'm coming at you first to say thank you. Actually, how are you? Because I'm struggling and I'm just a writer. And I feel like I'm at war every day, So when you go to the human element, things really change. And then when you go to the power element, I used to think this guy's good and this guy's bad and this guy's good and this guy's bad. If we had this good guy, then we wouldn't have these problems. We had this good guy. It's all power. I didn't look at today's incidents or the invasion as this person against this person, this and this, and I was like, this person is powerful, and they are using their power to try and obtain this thing by force. And I think it's like, yes, we can tweet and we can do this, but you're not actually thinking about. It's partly because of fantasy that when I look at the world, it's not so much this country, it's like this empire, and this empire, and this empire, and this is the king, and this is the king, and this is the king, and these are the peasants, and this king wants this land. What are these people got? I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about like from the kings. I'm thinking from the king's perspective because, oh no, did I break it? Okay. One of the things social media has done has made everyone sort of feel like a little king. And we forget that there are real people with real power. And everyone has power in their own way, shape, and form, but it's like, what are you going to do with it? So I think there's one, harnessing your power, truly harnessing it in whatever field you may be in. You don't have to be the ruler of an entire kingdom to harness and wield incredible power. I would even point to, like, again, you and Jesse, like you guys, your minds, the work you provide for the people that you work with is incredible power, and the people you choose to provide that power with. Like when Ronki said, oh, we have this and this in creative control. I'm like, that's like the person outside of Eden that was waving the flaming swords. I'm like, that's how I picture the Nords. I'm like, they're waving their flaming swords in the service of this story. And the incredible effect that's going to have not only for the story, but for the story impacts for creators following after. So if you look at everything as an opportunity to wield your power, and are you wielding it in service of something that you want, Are you defending something? That's how I choose to think and look at it, because I'm like, that person's wielding their power because they want this thing. How do you wield your power? So I think about it that way. It's not as black and white, good and evil. There are people, there are power, there's choices. And once you make peace with that and peace with human nature, that was also something over the pandemic when I was like, oh, the world hasn't ever been at peace. I was like, if you even go biblical, and then you go Cain and Abel, I was like, there was 4 people, and they were still like, screw you! So, when I was like, oh, we just don't like each other as people? Okay. Well, you just start accepting humans more, and then as opposed to seeing all the wrong, you see how well we're doing, and you think of how to do better, and then you focus on that, and you actually change. So I think if everyone focused on how to do better, and not, but I don't blame people, because again, I spent so long thinking, it's you 4 people, if you were gone, everything would be perfect. Now I'm like, no, we're very messy. So yeah.
This movie is going to be amazing, and her 3rd book comes out. I know her draft is due on my birthday, December 2nd, so that's my birthday present, and I encourage you to read it. It's truly amazing and well deserving of the praise and the worldwide phenomenon that is going to be here. So get ahead of it and tell everybody. But I guess maybe we'll turn the audience questions over to you. Does anybody have one? Oh yes, we have one in the back.
Let's ask it.
Yes.
I was just wondering how you create your name, like Enoch, and how his character, was so complete. Does that have something to do with how you create the names, or where do the names come from?
The names come from everywhere. Zaylee's name used to be like Lumen, and I knew it wasn't actually Lumen, but that was the placeholder because that was like what inspired me. And I have a writing website, and a French subscriber emailed this long thing about how a blog post had helped her, and her name was Zaylee, and I was like, that's it. And it was like I literally went Control, Find, Replace. So sometimes it's like that. Amari's name does mean possesses great strength. And even though I wasn't thinking that as I wrote her, it did come to define. It's also funny too, because especially in Nigerian culture, we really do believe in the power of names. And how names grow you. So that's interesting, and it happens even fictionally. But I knew I wanted, because my parents did Tomi, Toby, Tony, I knew I wanted Zaylee and Zayn to be like Zaylee, Zayn with a Z. And then Amari and Anan, his name used to be with an A. And then my agents at the time were like, this is confusing. So then we put a T in front of Zayn. And then, so there's all these little things. But I take names from everywhere. I collect pretty names. So if you tell me your name and I'm like, that's a good name, I'm like, I'm not joshing you. Because I'm like, if it could be in a book. I take my readers' names a lot, and then that's funny when they find them. Even people on Instagram, someone just DM'd, his name was To, like T-O''A. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like this character in book 3. But I'm not gonna let him know. So he'll know because we've messaged, but he'll be like, whoa. So yeah, I just take them from, names are poetry. They're really poetry, and the book I want to be as poetic as possible. So, but yeah, I find lots of names. Like I always tell a joke with Ronke. I was like, I don't know if you're getting grandchildren, but I do know what they would be named because I've seen all the pretty names. And I'm like, that's a pretty name, good name. So like I would be someone, I was like, I had you just to use the name. You're welcome. Yeah.
I want to piggyback off that because that's a genius question. What about also the language within the book? How does that form? If you also Audible book, do Audible, it's a phenomenal renderation. The narrator is beautiful dialect, and in the rituals, there's a language. And I just want to piggyback off names. How did you develop the language?
That is the language that my parents speak. They didn't teach it to me because they wanted to talk about the kids in front of us, and they still do that. So they kept their whole language to themselves, but I used, whenever they're doing magic in the book, they speak Yoruba. So yeah, that's where that comes from.
Will the movie be very close to the book?
Will the movie be very close to the book? Yes, but not in the way you think. In the sense that we were talking about this over here. I said the story plays in my head. There's a movie playing in my head. The book is a translation of that movie. So you know when there's a movie and then they have like the novel version? It's better because I was like, make the book, but I like had to translate what's in here into a book form and then divide that in 3 point of views, and like it basically becomes like a science math experiment. With the movie, I'm just transcripting what's in my head. And like I can write Zaylee spins in slow motion. I can cut you to an image. It's really satisfying because there's no do this, and then edit for the pros, and then this, and then we gotta put the world building in this. It's just straight. So it's like, it is the story, but it's a pure form. Yeah.
What's your plan for the next 20 years?
Ha! You know, that's funny. I actually had so many answers to that. I had all these different plots and schemes. For me, this is my real plan, what I decided. I am finishing the script this year, and I'm finishing book 3 this year. And then, so I'm like, I just have to be a little bit normal for 8 more months because I've been hiding the fact that I'm an insane woman for like 28 years. So my plan is to be normal for like 8 more months, and then I'm gonna walk around like Ellen John. What I'll do doesn't matter. There will be dogs. There will be lots of dogs. But yeah, that's the plan. I know the stories. You're getting really good stories. Like, I'm like, you guys are excited here. I'm already like 2 different series ahead. But I don't want to do this stressful, like, where's the book? Give me the book. So you're never gonna know. I'm like, here. I'll drop it like Beyonce. Yeah. But mostly I just want to be free to be like crazy. So that's my plan. Thank you.
Have you kept all your early writings, and would you ever consider publishing them in short stories?
I will probably publish the first story I ever wrote. And it's funny because sometimes when I'm like, are you to this? Are you to this? Are you to this? I just go back to the first page of that story and I'm like, oh, you've been the same since you were 7. Like that story, it's like Marilyn told Josh what she was feeling, and then they kissed, and then she sent him home. So I was like, okay, you've always been romantic, and you've always wanted a horse, and now you just have giant dogs, and so I'm very like consistent. But I would publish the first one because it is important to me that people see, and I just think everyone has that thing that they did without anyone telling them to do it. And you don't actually think that that thing can take you exactly where you want to go in life, but it's the only thing that can take you exactly where you want to go in life. Because I just feel like it's there by design. And you can do anything in the world with it, and you can be a rock star with it. So I think just showing people that you really, it's there. You then have to craft it, but you're going to craft it anyway because it's literally a part of you, and it makes everything else make sense. Yeah. Jessie.
Yeah, so I was raised by a huge fan of fantasy, white male boomer, also a crazy man, and so I read a ton of fantasy novels, and you always look like Clive Barker and all these incredibly complicated, overly complex, definitely aimed at white men. That's what most fantasy is. I know that
it's not temptation. I think it's what excites you. So it's like someone like J.R.R. Tolkien, like he was excited by languages. So everything, the entire trilogy is just a backdrop for him to nerd out about fantasy languages. You know, for me, every story revolves around the makeout. The entire, and you think I'm joking, you think everyone's like, oh, she's joking. Nope, it's the makeout. All the violence, all the epicness, all the like, the allegory, all the brilliance is around one like really hot makeout. I see it in my head and the entire story builds around it. And I'm not joking. And the first thing I knew in book 2, I was like, this is the makeout. Okay, now we'll do this. And even with the movie, I'm like, oh my God. Like, you know, so for me, I am most interested in the makeout. And I'm most interested too in the action. I'm like, I decided everyone from Chicago is crazy. Because it's like that, I just love it. And everything's on fire all the time. If you go into like where I live, there's candles everywhere. So it's the same, it's like I do the normal version in my life, but in the book it's like everything's on fire. It's the best makeout ever. This is the most epic action ever. So I focus on the things that are interesting to me. I think male fantasy writers are very interested in world building. They love the system. And I get it, because you're like, you're God. And I'm like, I get it. But for me, it's what's the most epic thing and what's the most beautiful place I could put it. Like that's, and then what's the hottest makeout, and how long can I drag out that tension for? So I just focus, I don't age anything down or this, I just focus on what I want to focus. And look, my financial manager, who is definitely a man, loves it. So everyone secretly loves the makeout, and that's what I've learned. Everyone is a 12-year-old girl in the privacy of their home. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. 12-year-old girls are so happy. So yeah. Do we want to do one more, and then everyone has to do 2 more? Okay, we'll do this, and then everyone has to drink more wine. You've all disappointed me, but you've been a wonderful audience.
Do you have a nickname, and how did you get that?
Oh. Well, everyone that here is going to call me it, though. I know. I'm like, are you ready to, like... That's me checking. I, like, check with myself. I was like, okay. We accept it. We share it. My nickname is Choo Choo. I don't know where it came from. Where did it come from? Okay, then it did come from Dad. Okay. So my nickname is Choo Choo. He sent me something. He had put Choo Choo on a golf ball. And I was like, that's adorable. So that's my nickname, but I don't know where it came from.
There's a little engine that could.
I love it! I like that. I like that. And then our last question.
Well, my question is more about the after effect of being famous. And
Oh,
how
that's
is
my
that-
question.
How was that, like, were you ready for all that? And is this something that is easily, easy to deal with?
It's just
Such a good question.
It's just, we're at the,
I know, but you're in front of the audience talking,
yeah.
and like people are, obviously the books are going crazy.
The reason I said adult junior, or no, adult light, I felt like when I started this I was adult junior. And it's weird because I feel like I've had the experience of a child star, but not being a child star, but psychologically I was still infantile like when this started. And so there's so much that's gone into it. I'll say like 2 or 3 things. The first thing I'll say is there's definitely a lot to adjust to, but I never have wanted to be like, this is so hard. Hey, I got anxiety and depression. And I am not trying to minimize that at all, because it's serious. But Anytime I face something and I'm super frustrated, I'm like, yes, but you could have chosen to be an accountant. That's my thing. That's my thing. There are deeply, and it's fun, like, I do not want to minimize the deeply intense experiences and a lot of times traumatic experiences and emotional experiences of being in the public eye in any way. But I'm always like, you are there by choice. So I never want to hear it from anyone, even myself. It's like, sure, it's like I can rant to my mom if I want to. It's like, fine. And I'm not saying you have to accept everything. You should experience it. But I always feel like when you see someone in the public and they're on Instagram and they're talking about how this is so hard for them, and this is so hard for them, this is so hard, I'm like, you chose to be there. And you're being paid well. So don't be complaining about anything. Especially when everyone in the world is dealing with the things you're dealing with, a lot of times with less financial resources and with a hard time. So again, that's like I said, I'm just Nigerian. Or I'm like, my parents were hard on me growing up. And you can tell. And so there's always this sense of like, yes, there's a lot that comes with it. I've had to deal with a lot, but I've never been like, I was like, no, I chose to be here. And I still choose to be here. That was something I went through last year. I'm like, do you still want this? You had the dream, you achieved the dream, now you know the reality of the dream. Do you still want this? And it, again, returned to that 7-year-old girl. Well, she wants to write stories. And why not do it in a princess dress? And why not get more money than your working? So, yes. I think it's like, for me, I return with that, like, no, I'm here, I'm staying, this is mine now. But that also, the second thing I'll say is I think it's just about knowing who you actually are. Being in the public eye is a lot of stimulus. It's a lot of external stimulus. And for me, it's never really mattered what's happening, be it good, bad. It's more like, am I aligned with myself? If you know who you are alone in a room, then sitting in front of a group of people, you're still you. And if you're carrying you everywhere, then it doesn't really matter if something is happening that is good or bad, because you're still you. The times when I've been disjointed with myself, and you don't know who you are alone in a room, you know what to say in front of people, but you know, it's like I'm actually just talking to you. And so it's like whether there's a microphone or it's just like we're both getting crackers at the same time, I've now aged into a point of like, oh, okay, I know who that person is. And now I'm like, let's have fun. So that's my attitude. Like, you chose to be here. Shut up. And enjoy it. Enjoy it. People are nice. They give you food. You know, I'm like, there's worse things. Someone always has something to say to you. You know, you're like, it's chill, but you just, when you lose yourself in it, and then you start equating everything that feels wrong with it, as opposed to it's like, well, I am unbalanced by myself. But I'm also surrounded by really good people now. And I'll say that is the most treacherous form of it, because when you're surrounded by really bad people, it's hell. It is hell. So I know I can also speak from this place because I'm surrounded by I'm like, you heard my financial manager. You know, like I was like, you're not an accountant. I've had accountants. I fired accountants. This is my financial manager. And it's like being with, once you get good people, that changes it a lot too. Great question. Cool question.
Just real quickly before we do that, we just wanted to say thank you. And we have a little gift. We have, he likes spas, so we gave him just a little spa. When you're having your cocktail or your wine. You can have an Andalusia glass.